The moment I came face to face with death over a piece of bread was when I realized how fragile my life really was. The truck's massive tire was inches from my head, the driver's angry shouts echoing above me, and all I could think about was that single crust of bread trapped beneath the wheel. That bread meant survival. Without it, I wouldn't see another sunrise. But let me take you back to how it all began, because every stray dog's story starts with abandonment, and mine was no different. I don't remember being born, but I remember the warmth. A pile of squirming bodies, all of us blind and helpless, pressed against our mother's belly. The alley behind the old bakery was our universe, cold concrete walls, the sweet smell of rising dough, and the constant rumble of traffic that would later become the soundtrack to my survival. For 6 weeks, life was simple. Milk, warmth, sleep. My mother would disappear for hours, returning with scraps and the occasional treasure, a half-eaten sandwich, a dropped piece of chicken. She never spoke of the outside world, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she counted us every time she returned, as if expecting one of us to simply vanish. Then came the morning that changed everything. I woke to silence. No heartbeat beneath my ear, no warm breath ruffling my fur. My mother was gone, and with her, the illusion of safety. My siblings and I huddled together, waiting for her return. Hours passed. The sun moved across the narrow strip of sky visible between the buildings. Our whimpering grew weaker. She never came back. But then, just when hope seemed lost, I heard footsteps approaching our hiding spot. A woman's voice, gentle but determined. "Oh my God, look at them. They're just babies." Hands reached down, careful but urgent. One by one, my siblings disappeared into a cardboard box. The sounds of their departure grew fainter until silence returned to the alley. I had hidden deeper in the shadows, pressed against a broken crate, my small body trembling. Some instinct told me to stay hidden, to wait. When the footsteps finally faded, I was alone. Truly, completely alone. The first lesson of street life came quickly: hunger doesn't wait for you to be ready. By the second day, my stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside. The sweet bakery smells that once comforted me now tormented me, reminding me of everything I couldn't have. I ventured out on unsteady legs, following my nose to a dumpster behind a restaurant. The metal container loomed above me like a fortress, impossibly high, its contents hidden behind a wall of steel. I circled it desperately, whining, jumping uselessly at its smooth sides. That's when I learned about competition. A shadow fell across me. I looked up to see another dog, older, scarred, his ribs showing through patchy fur. His eyes held no warmth, no kinship. Just calculation. "Move along, pup," his growl seemed to say, though he never made a sound. The message was clear in his posture, in the way he positioned himself between me and the dumpster. This was his territory. I was trespassing. I backed away, tail tucked, but something inside me refused to surrender completely. I watched from the corner, studying him, learning. When he finally left, I returned, and this time I noticed something he had missed, a tiny gap where the dumpster met the wall. I squeezed through, my small size finally an advantage, and found myself in a landscape of wonders and horrors. Rotting vegetables, moldy bread, chicken bones that could splinter and kill, and somewhere in the mess, salvation. A half-eaten burger, still wrapped in paper. I had found my first real meal. That was the moment everything changed. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was learning to live. The weeks that followed taught me the street rules. Never eat in the open, trust no one completely, find shelter before dark. I learned these lessons through painful encounters with older dogs, unpredictable humans, and the predators that owned the night. I made my home in an abandoned car in an empty lot. The broken windows provided escape routes, the torn vinyl seats became my bed, and the dashboard became my lookout post. It wasn't much, but it was mine, the first territory I could defend since losing my mother. But the street doesn't let you get comfortable for long. It was during my 3rd month in the car that I encountered the plastic bag. I had been exploring the construction site, nosing through piles of debris, when I heard it, a soft rustling, almost like whispers. The sound came from inside a torn plastic bag wedged between 2 concrete blocks. Curiosity overcame caution. I approached slowly, ears forward, nose twitching. The bag moved again, and something inside it whimpered. I tore through the plastic with my teeth, and what I found changed me forever. 3 puppies, younger than I had been when my mother disappeared. Their eyes were barely open, their bodies so small I could have held all 3 in my mouth. They were dying, I could see it in their shallow breathing, in the way they barely moved when I touched them. And here's the part no one would ever expect, I made a choice that went against every survival instinct I had learned. I didn't walk away. Instead, I dragged the bag back to my car, 1 puppy at a time, carrying them as gently as my mother once carried me. I had no milk to give them, no knowledge of how to care for babies, but I had warmth, and I had determination. For 3 days, I barely left their side. I cleaned them as best I could, shared my own body heat, and searched desperately for food they could digest. I brought back soggy bread soaked in puddle water, chewed meat until it was soft enough for their tiny mouths. 2 of them died anyway. I buried them behind the car, using my paws to dig small graves in the soft earth. I had never lost anyone before, not consciously, not as a choice I had made. The weight of their death sat heavy in my chest, a pain different from hunger or cold or fear. But the 3rd one lived. I named her Shadow, because she followed me everywhere, staying close enough to touch. She grew stronger each day, her eyes bright with curiosity instead of the dullness of approaching death. Caring for Shadow taught me something profound about survival. It wasn't just about staying alive anymore. It was about having something worth staying alive for. The autumn brought new challenges. The weather turned cold, and food became scarcer as tourists disappeared and restaurants closed their outdoor seating. Shadow was old enough to help me search, but she was also another mouth to feed, another life depending on my choices. It was on one of these increasingly desperate foraging trips that I found myself face to face with that truck tire, staring death in the eye for a piece of bread. Subscribe and comment, the most shocking part of this story is about to come. I had spotted the bread under the truck's front wheel while the driver was inside a convenience store. It was a perfect piece, fresh, whole, enough to feed both Shadow and me for a day. But as I darted underneath to grab it, I heard the engine roar to life above me. Time slowed. The massive tire began to roll forward, and I realized with crystal clarity that I was trapped. The bread was pinned beneath the wheel, my paw was caught in a crevice in the pavement, and the truck was moving. In that moment, suspended between life and death, I understood something about courage. It's not the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite the terror. I yanked my paw free, leaving skin behind on the rough concrete, and rolled sideways just as the tire passed over the spot where my head had been. The bread was crushed, useless. My paw throbbed with pain. But I was alive. The driver never even knew how close he had come to ending my story. I limped back to Shadow, my injured paw leaving small traces of blood on the pavement. She greeted me with worried whines, licking my wounds with a gentleness that reminded me why survival mattered. That night, as we huddled together in our car, I made a decision that would define the rest of our lives. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I approached a human. She was an elderly woman who walked past our lot every day on her way to the bus stop. I had watched her for weeks, noting her gentle manner, the way she spoke softly to the pigeons, how she never moved too quickly or made sudden gestures. I walked up to her with Shadow beside me and sat down directly in her path. She stopped, her eyes widening. "Well, hello there," she said softly. "You look like you could use some help." Her name was Mrs. Chen, and she became the first human I ever truly trusted. She didn't try to catch us or take us away from our territory. Instead, she started bringing food, real dog food, not scraps, and leaving it beside our car every morning. More importantly, she brought something else: consistency. Every day at the same time, she would appear with food and fresh water. She would sit on an old crate nearby and talk to us while we ate, her voice a constant, soothing presence in our chaotic world. "You're survivors," she would say. "Both of you. But surviving isn't the same as living." It took months before I let her touch me, and even longer before Shadow did. Trust, I learned, is built in moments but proven over time. The winter was harsh, but with Mrs. Chen's help, we survived it. She brought blankets, a small shelter that fit perfectly in our car, and on the coldest nights, she would stay longer, ensuring we were warm and safe before she left. As spring returned, I noticed changes in myself and Shadow. We were stronger, healthier, but more than that, we were different. The constant fear that had defined our early lives had been replaced by something else. Not complacency, but confidence. We knew our territory, understood our resources, and had built relationships that sustained us. One morning, Mrs. Chen arrived with someone new, a younger woman carrying a camera. "This is Sarah," Mrs. Chen said. "She works with an organization that helps street animals. She's been documenting stories like yours." Sarah knelt at a respectful distance, her camera clicking softly. "You've done something amazing here," she said to Mrs. Chen, but her eyes were on us. "You've shown them that humans can be trusted, that there's more to life than just surviving." Share and subscribe to keep this journey alive. Over the following months, our story spread. Sarah's photographs appeared in newspapers and online, accompanied by articles about street dogs and the people who help them. Donations poured into animal welfare organizations. New volunteers joined rescue efforts. But the most profound change was in us. Shadow grew into a confident, intelligent dog who could navigate the streets with the wisdom of experience but without the desperate edge of pure survival. She learned to trust selectively, to help other strays when she could, to find joy in simple things like warm sunlight and clean water. As for me, I discovered that survival had taught me something unexpected: leadership. Other strays began to follow our example, learning from our relationship with Mrs. Chen, understanding that not all humans were threats. I became what I had never expected to be, a bridge between two worlds. Years passed. Shadow eventually chose to live with a family who could give her the consistent indoor life I knew she deserved. I remained in the lot, not out of inability to adapt, but out of choice. This was my territory, my responsibility. New strays appeared regularly, and I was there to teach them what I had learned: how to survive, yes, but also how to live. Mrs. Chen grew older, and eventually, she couldn't make the daily walk. But by then, others had taken her place, a network of volunteers who had learned from her example of consistent, respectful care. The plastic bag that had contained those 3 puppies still sits in our old car, now empty but preserved. It reminds me daily of the choice that changed everything, the moment I decided that survival wasn't enough, that some things are worth the risk. That piece of bread I almost died for became a symbol in my mind. Not of the food itself, but of the desperate hunger that drives us to make dangerous choices. I learned that there are better ways to feed that hunger, not just for food, but for connection, for purpose, for meaning. Today, when I see young strays making their first forays into the world, risking everything for scraps, I try to show them what Mrs. Chen showed me, that survival is just the beginning. The real victory isn't avoiding death, it's building a life worth living. Sometimes, late at night, I think about my mother. I wonder if she made the same choice I did, leaving us not out of abandonment but out of love, knowing she couldn't provide what we needed. I like to think that wherever she is, she would be proud of the dog I became. The abandoned lot where I made my home is being developed now. Soon, there will be buildings here, families, children playing where Shadow and I once searched for food. But our story will remain, passed down through the network of humans and animals who learned that compassion doesn't require perfection, it just requires showing up, consistently, with whatever you have to offer. I still live on the streets, but I'm no longer a stray. I'm a guardian, a teacher, a reminder that every life has value, and that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can ripple outward in ways we never imagine. That piece of bread nearly cost me my life. Instead, it taught me something far more valuable, that courage isn't about fearlessness, it's about deciding that something matters enough to risk everything for it. In my case, that something was hope. And hope, as it turns out, is the one thing the streets can never take away from you, as long as you choose to hold on to it.